All right, guys, we're moving into our Mandalorian spoiler review. So we're reviewing episode 1 and 2 of the show. If you haven't seen it, get out of here. Many apologies to those in Europe. Hope you guys are doing okay. Let's talk about episode 1 here. Or like, how do you guys want to do this? You want to guys talk about it all together, or do you want to go?
I want to talk about
episode?
it. I want to talk about it slightly separately because I think there are some definite differences between 1 and 2.
Yeah, they are quite distinct from each other.
One of the interesting things about this in general is that they are not conforming to a solid time for each one. Like the first one was 40 minutes, second one was 30 minutes. That is a very interesting.
I was shocked when I saw the
strategy.
38-minute runtime on the first one. I'm
Crazy,
like, nobody
right?
does that. There's no like 38-minute. They're called hour-long dramas.
Yeah. And I think that it is incredibly interesting because from a concept level, to me, that says, you know, we're taking the time to tell a story, not like putting in or taking stuff out in order to conform to any like set time slot, which is really interesting. So having said that, episode 1, right off the bat, I had 2 thoughts. First of all was, I really enjoy this. Like that first bar scene, I thought, I like this. You know, there's a good mix of practical effects and, you know, good music, well shot, really engaging.
Got that Star Wars vibe. Very much feels like Obi-Wan in episode 4.
That was my second thought, which is that this doesn't feel like a Star Wars film or a Star Wars property. But the more I thought about that, the more I kind of realize is I don't really know what a Star Wars film or property should feel like, because I've just recently gone through the original trilogy and the prequels, and the original trilogy feels quite different than the prequels, and the prequels definitely feel like Star Wars, and the new trilogy still feels like Star Wars, but feels very different than the original trilogy. And then I think about like Knights of the Old Republic, that feels like Star Wars, but is very different than all the. I was trying to figure out what is it like when people say this doesn't feel like Star Wars. What's that kind of defining aspect? In the same way that this, like, I don't feel like this has regained any like feeling of Star Wars. It feels as though it belongs in that universe.
Yeah, they did it spot on, I feel.
So
it's that grungy underbelly aspect. It's dirty, it's grimy, it's not Star Trek, it's not clean and shiny, it's real, it's lived in. And
but even if you think about the new sequel, that feels pretty shiny.
I'm talking about Mandalorian.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I don't like, maybe I'm just having a hard concept with people saying like this, like, when anyone tries to define what a Star Wars film is or what a Star Wars film feels like, I feel like it's spanned over so much, I guess. Like
this feels more like the original trilogy, way more to me. Like more than any of those things, more than any of those trilogies you mentioned, this is definitely feels way more like the original trilogy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to jump in with there. What really struck me about this after watching the first episode a few times was that it felt more like the original trilogy than anything else that has come since then, especially tonally, because going into this, I think what they were trying to sell to an extent, what we all expected was like a kind of a gritty underworld, more mature Star Wars-y sort of thing, maybe like Rogue One with a little bit of the training gloves taken off even. And then this comes along and it's kind of goofy and funny and silly, but also, you know, serious. It's weird, and
it walks that line really well, doesn't it?
Yeah, like really like I think the original trilogy does, and like you said, the mix of the practical and the visual effects. It's really the first thing I've seen that I've been like, oh, this really reminds me of those old movies that kind of took the world's imagination and never gave it back, you know.
And I loved how I just need to double check that this was in fact in the first one, where he goes and when he meets the droid character, the funny, quirky droid character.
IG-11, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Waititi's character?
Was that Taika Waititi?
Yeah,
Cool. The what you can see as being set up as like a buddy, like the one that's going to be with him for the entire series, he fucking shoots in the head. I'm like, yes, brilliant. That's fantastic. Because everyone has had that kind of droid character, and it felt so overdone. And I was like, don't do it.
He'll probably come back, but I know what you mean.
I hope he doesn't. I hope that's it.
Oh my god, my first thought after the first episode was, man, I hope he's in every episode like the Kenny. Like he gets shot in the head every time.
He keeps shooting him.
I'm IG-12.
Yeah.
But I also loved where this is set. We talked about this a little bit, Benny, after we watched it. It's a lot more of an interesting world than where we were in The Force Awakens. Force Awakens is basically exactly the same scenario. There's good guys, there's bad guys. There, we got to go find a map. This one, it's like we've got a world where, potentially the Empire brought stability and order to the galaxy. We've got a galaxy in ruins, factions of segments of people that just not conforming to the rule sets, multiple currencies.
Yeah, that was really cool.
It was just already I was way more engaged, and it felt more complex, I guess.
Loved that they're delving into this lore of the Mandalorians, like that scene where they had like the craftsman.
One of my favorite scenes.
That is, I think that might actually be my favorite scene.
Gina Carano.
Is it really?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
I was surprised because she seemed to act fine.
Gina Carano, no, I don't think that's her in the Mandalorian
No,
scene.
I read that somewhere.
I think she's a different character, but she's coming up.
At any rate,
but that
very cool scene.
Couple interesting things in that scene. So we've got this material, the steel, that the Mandalorians use for their armor, which is lightsaber proof, I believe.
Right.
And then as she's making this shoulder piece for the Mandalorian, it flashes back to when he's a kid. And evidently this is, if you think about his age, this is potentially in the Clone Wars era that you're seeing. So, there was a couple of instances in the episode where he was very untrusting of droids. Potentially the reason for that was the Separatist army maybe came into his village or whatever. There's some interesting stuff being set up that connects to the prequels, connects to original trilogy. I'm really enjoying that. Like, you got the Jabba's palace, the eyeball thing coming. That was really just like, I really loved that kind of stuff.
That was the kind of thing that I wish Star Wars did more often. If they want to make this world feel as though it's lived in, like, and also maybe put in a little bit of nostalgia, that seems like a non-consequential thing. Like, it's not like R2-D2 showing up arbitrarily. Yeah. It's more like,
and it's not like, this thing that Luke Skywalker was, that little ball that Finn grabs. in the Force Awakens.
This is more like, this is a common thing in this world. You would see it.
Yeah, it's a thin distinction, but this feels like it's kind of, it's in the same world as the originals without being so slavishly beholden to them. Like, oh, the Millennium Falcon, everyone falls down crying. It's like, no, this is just another story set in that world. It feels like if Star Wars hadn't become a phenomenon, and after 40 years, we're just getting a new thing to this cult something.
I know exactly what you mean.
Even though it's like $20 million an episode.
But like, it doesn't commit the cardinal sin of a lot of these Star Wars films, which is beholden to the original trilogy in ways that are superfluous and not
and very
engaging.
on the nose.
Yeah. Episode 1 I thought was really fantastic. That the action scene or the action scenes are also really well choreographed and really well shot as well. So this
when it's on the turret at the end, and it's like that really triumphant music, and I was like, "This is fucking awesome, man! I'm really enjoying this."
I was so on board.
Had a massive grin on my face. I think credit to Dave Filoni. This is his first live action thing he's ever done. He did the Clone Wars thing in 2007, and also the TV series. He's like sort of shepherded that through.
What did Filoni do?
He's like George Lucas's right hand.
He directed the first episode,
and
wasn't it Jon Favreau that directed it?
No. He wrote it.
I saw that in the.
He wrote it.
He wrote it.
Yeah, I know he wrote it, and
he didn't direct the first episode.
It was Dave Filoni.
And props to that guy.
You can see it a little bit in the style.
Some of it feels like an animated TV series,
which I liked.
Yeah, I really like the way it's put together. Honestly, it feels like a really well It's going to sound like an insult, but it's not because of the world we live in nowadays. It feels like a fan film at points, though, the way it's put together.
2 questions. first of all, do you think that this might have been part of the story, or this is kind of like the skeleton of what the Boba Fett movie was going to be? Potentially.
Potentially.
Totally, yeah.
I don't think it feels like it, but potentially.
I
Well, because,
feel
like-
like I don't feel like it's a coincidence that we're watching a story about, not Boba Fett and not IG-88 dealing with not Yoda.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they're being careful about the brand. Yeah.
Yeah. And the the other question was, does this retroactively make Boba Fett a better character? Because I have always had a real distaste for how popular that character is for being so utterly useless and so unremarkable, apart from the cool way that he looks, which is the only reason that he's ever really garnered any kind of fandom, I suppose. Does this retroactively make it better?
100%. Yeah, I was just thinking today how much I could see, because the thing about Boba Fett is interesting because he has, this badass reputation, but if you just take what you see in the movies, he really sucks.
Yeah.
But watching The Mandalorian, I could see how someone like the main character in that, who fails and gets his ass kicked a lot of the time, would also still have a good reputation, because he is still a badass, but he also nearly gets killed by a big dumb lizard at some point.
But he gets shit done.
Yeah, exactly. He still disintegrates a lot of motherfuckers.
He muscles his way through and he gets there in the end.
Yeah.
So just quickly, Pedro Pascal confirmed the name of the character, Din Djarin. Doesn't he could still be Boba Fett for sure. But just something to note there.
So wait.
If he turns out to be Boba Fett or like a clone of Boba Fett or something, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. One
Really?
interesting thing to note in episode 1 is with Werner Herzog, who I just love that dude's voice.
Oh my God.
The scientist doctor guy, his right-hand man, he has an emblem on his
Camino
shirt, the symbol of Camino, the planet in episode 2 where they were doing all the clones for the clone army. What does that mean? Why do they want, spoilers, Baby Yoda, the big reveal in this? What are they going to do with Baby Yoda? This is only the third time we've seen one of this species other than Yoda Yaddle.
Unnamed species.
Unnamed species.
It's really interesting.
What are they doing here? What is the significance of this species? He's already force sensitive, or she's already force sensitive, and unbelievably cute. I just think like they're doing it. I feel like this is the first time they've really, since this whole acquisition has happened, they've really felt like they've gotten the Star Wars thing right. And I think this is adding to the mythos in interesting ways with this Yoda character, and I don't know. It's just intriguing me to another level.
They're definitely building on lore in a better way, I feel.
Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a little bit of that in The Last Jedi, which I liked how they kind of delved into the initial like tree of the Jedi or whatever the fuck it was. Like, I was like, okay, cool. We're getting a little bit of that. So I don't want to like discredit what they've done already as like completely relevant, but I love that they're focusing in on a piece of lore and building it out and retroactively making things better, which is not something that at least I have seen in the Star Wars films as yet.
Feels like the first thing since Last Jedi. I know it's controversial, whatever. That is actually not mostly just an echo of what's come before.
Yeah,
to a large extent.
Yeah. But to your point about him being Boba Fett, I'm almost like 99.9% sure that it's not.
I agree, but just quickly, it is very interesting that we have a main character who looks very similar to Boba Fett who isn't named in the show, and doesn't show his face. Like that is an interesting move. So never rule anything out.
Yeah, I mean, like they've explained it away by saying Mandalorians don't take their helmets off. Obviously, seeing the other Mandalorian in this that has a similar helmet, you can kind of say like, okay, yeah, like they all have a very similar look.
He looks so much better than Boba Fett. That suit is great.
Like 20 times better.
I would say 24.
Ooh, controversial.
Right, sorry.
So should we talk a little bit more specifically around episode 2, which was much shorter and
more contained, I felt as well.
More contained, but also felt a little bit more like a mission type episode, which
was Clone Warsy, I felt. It felt very much like one of those Clone Wars episodes where it's like,
Okay, yeah. I see what
here
you're saying.
is our goal for this episode. And it's
Mm.
very self-contained and it's this little mission.
Yeah, and I don't know whether. Like, I much preferred episode 1 to episode 2. It felt like a dip to me. And I think a lot of that has to do with just kind of the nature of the plot in general. It felt like episode 1 should have actually been an hour and 10 minutes and should have included this, or an hour and 20 minutes and it should have included this. That would have felt more like a drawn out, proper kind of story. Does that make sense? Like,
no, because you've got to finish on that hook of the little baby Yoda. In
but that's
episode
the
1.
only reason I can think of to not make it an hour and 20.
I think what I enjoyed about this episode was just kind of like, for all my complaints about the Clone Wars, I do like a lot of it. And I liked that we had this really sort of quite dense first episode. And hey, here's just a fun little adventure with the Mandalorian. Got some Jawas. Like, it just felt good to me. And I was really happy to spend time there. I've watched episode 1 3 times. I've watched episode 2 twice. So I'm just really enjoying this.
I didn't dislike it, but I just feel like, if you're going to do this week by week episode thing, right? And we just finished talking about The Watchmen, about how every episode feels so complete, but also continues on the story. And like, just, it's a good time. I feel like if I had waited a week to watch this, I'd have kind of been a little bit like, this is a dip. Like, this isn't quite the same level of quality, or I'm not getting the same amount out of it. And I think that
wasn't that noticeable of a dip. I don't think it's as good as episode 1, but I do think it was like a really solid episode, and I really enjoyed it. Particularly Baby Yoda. I can't get enough of this little critter.
didn't really do anything though.
Yeah, well, he saved the day at the end. She saved the day at the end.
I don't know what it is. Episode 2 made me like the series a lot more than I initially did. For whatever reason, I love the difference between the 2 episodes. I love the running time difference, especially. I think that's really interesting. I love that it was so interesting to watch a show that is just about this one character, essentially.
Yeah.
Like in this age of huge ensemble casts with a million things happening. Not to say that that's not great as well, but it was really kind of refreshing to see.
Yeah.
And I love that it was this one tiny little mission. I love the scope of this show. It's so I don't know, something we haven't seen in Star Wars too often. And like you said, Georgie, that Baby Yoda is amazing. I think
I need the toy.
they're going to make
now.
$1 billion off that likeness, which is horrible, but it's true.
Send
I
it.
also think Joe Dante might have a pretty significant legal case against them because it's just Gizmo from Gremlins, but
so
green.
close. It's so
Like,
close.
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculously close.
Yeah, like it's so much more like Gizmo than Yoda.
Yeah. I don't disagree with any point that you made. I kind of want to wait until episode 3 to see if it blends. And you know what? This, like, having just seen the first 2 episodes, this feels like something that shouldn't have a staggered release. This feels like something that should kind of maybe be released all at once. Again, I'll wait until like episode 3 and 4 before I make before I kind of confirm that comment. But like, so far, I don't see any real benefit in there being a week in between those 2 episodes.
I just love going back to rewatch. It's like in that Watchmen podcast, Damon Lindelof talking about each issue came out a month apart. So he read issue 1 like 17 times before 2 came out, and then you reread 1 and read 2 again. And I feel like the same thing's happening again. I've watched these multiple times over, and I'm getting a lot out of it. I know what you're saying. Like, maybe the density of the show's not on the same level as Watchmen. But let's see. Will we get a 45-minute episode? Potentially. Who knows what are the parameters where the show can go?
It's not even the length that really I'm interested in. It's going to be like, what is the feel of this episode? Is there a particular reason that it has to be, again, a week apart? Because again, I agree with you when you're talking about Watchmen, about a week apart makes sense. You can rewatch it. There's density to it. There's relevance to that.
There is here as well.
Yeah, but not nearly as much, at least in my opinion. And you can
Depends what you're
rewatch
looking
things.
for.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
guess.
it depends how deeply you want to read into kind of the Star Wars universe because that's a whole
There's a lot
other
of Easter
thing.
eggs in here.
Um,
Can we talk about off-world Jawas for just 1 second?
Yes,
They're
please.
not the same Jawas. They've got red eyes.
Yeah.
So interesting. Still keeping it to the New Hope, keeping it to original trilogy.
Subtitles as well, though.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
interesting. Did you notice that?
Interesting.
That was something that felt very un-Star Warsy
No. Yeah, we had subtitles in episode 1. With
for Jawas.
No, not for Jawas, not for Jawas.
For who?
Gungans.
Sorry, not episode, like the episode 1 of The Mandalorian. They had the characters speaking with subtitles, the aliens in the bar.
Oh, maybe they did. This one is just the one that kind of struck me as like, as kind of like, oh, that feels very un-Star Wars like, because it's always been like someone's kind of played the translator, or you've kind of had to grasp it from context, which I've always kind of enjoyed with like the droids and that.
Yeah.
This is the first time you've seen like an alien talk, at least that that I've noticed.
I can't believe how much I'm liking Pedro Pascal in this role.
So good.
With
Oh yeah,
on paper, how little he seems to have to do. I don't know how often he's even in the suit, because he has like 2 body doubles credited, I think. But
whoever's in that suit, the physicality that they are showing
on.
is so good.
yeah, and his line delivery is so fantastic for what we're just looking at a static mask the whole time. I don't know, he's delivering, like, there are some lines that kind of sound like action movie cliches almost, but the way he says it just works so much
There's
better.
two
Bring you in,
lines- there's
or I
two
could
lines
bring you
that-
in cold.
There's 2 lines that I didn't like. One was, "I was a fledgling," or something like that. I was like, oh, okay, nice lead into these callbacks.
Youngling, fledgling.
Whatever it was, yeah. And then the other line was like, he's like, "I can't put it down. Like, I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are part of our religion." I was like, okay. But I mean, like, they're not particularly egregious lines. Like, I'm not.
I think he's so
But
spot on.
you are right, which is that the tone of his voice, or whatever it is about his voice, just kind of like you got me.
I don't think I've liked him since Game of Thrones. I feel like most other roles, like Kingsman 2 and stuff, I'm just like, I'm not sure about this guy anymore.
That's right.
Anyway, how about I guess to finish off, maybe the music, which is amazing.
Incredible.
Oh, so good.
And very
Yeah.
distinct from normal Star Wars.
Yeah,
And I think some people aren't enjoying that.
that's crazy. I think it's the best thing since Duel of the Fates. Like, it's
so good.
outstanding.
There's this really
I really
cool,
like
the main theme, the credits one.
yeah,
Fuck.
the main theme is so good.
Mm.
You know what? I might see if we can get it on.
There's one synth track that comes through and it's got like this
Yeah.
thing, and it's just so not Star Wars, but it fits perfectly.
Mm.
I tip my hat to what's his name? Black Panther.
Ludwig Göransson.
Ludwig. Well done.
That dude.
One final thing. Loved the Houdini egg. Them just like cracking this egg open and
Like
just
getting
eating
into
it.
it,
I thought that was
yeah.
fantastic.
Mm.
And final question: what's going to happen with this little Yoda guy? There's going to be some morality test for the Mandalorian. Does he give him over or not?
Mm.
I think that's going down an interesting path. Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I guess specifically, I think he'll probably give him over and 5 minutes later try to break him back out.
Sounds
Yeah.
about right. Yeah.
That's how it goes with these guys. Because he's a bad dude. He's killed a lot of people so far.
Are you employed in Hollywood?
He should be.
Yeah, you really should.
Yeah.